Hi everyone, welcome to this video on lesson 9 of the Earth and Climate scheme of work. In this lesson, this is the first of a new sequence of lessons. So in the first 8 lessons, we were looking at the rock cycle and how the rock cycle is this kind of organizing scheme, organizing concept that links all of these different ideas to do with the different types of rock and so on, links all of those together. And as we saw in those first 8 lessons, we kept referring back to the rock cycle so that students always knew where they were in the story and how everything that they were learning about in that particular lesson linked to everything that was going on in the other lessons. And we're going to do something very, very similar in this next sequence of lessons. So this sequence runs all the way through kind of climate change and all of that sort of stuff, global warming, atmospheric pollutants, combustion, fractional distillation, lots and lots of different things. But we want to keep coming back to this organizing scheme, which in this case is the carbon cycle. So we've seen the rock cycle in the first 8 lessons. In this next set of lessons, we're looking at the carbon cycle. So I'm just going to start with a diagram that I've drawn of the carbon cycle. You may wish to use your own diagram. You may wish to just use the diagram that's in the slides. I think that's pretty good as well. And what we want to do in this first lesson, before we do anything, is just tell students the whole story. Now, we're not expecting that they're going to grasp the carbon cycle immediately because this is a really difficult concept. It was only kind of late 1700s that scientists actually realized that all of this stuff was interacting in this way. So it's a difficult concept. And I think the key point to make as you start this sequence of lessons is that everything that we're doing is essentially illustrating this broader concept, this big idea that everything is linked together, because that's really hard for students to grasp. And if they can see how it all links together, well then they can understand a lot of what gets taught to them in biology, because this is a really big organizing picture that's going to help them build those schemata in their minds. So when I'm talking about this, I just want to tell them a story and say, look, what we need to understand and what this sequence of lessons aims to emphasize is that everything in the world that we think might be unrelated is actually related, and they're all interacting. So we think, well, we've got the Earth here and the weather up there, and those two don't really have anything to do with one another. No, actually, there's this constant interaction between what's happening underground in the Earth and what's happening up in the sky in the atmosphere. So it doesn't really matter where you start. I think a reasonable place to start, and that's where we're going to start in today's lesson, is down here. So we've got living things. We know that there's animals and plants like trees. They're living. So one thing that they do, and this is something that is familiar from well, various schemes of work, but certainly 2 of the schemes of work that we did in year 7, Human Body Part 1 and Plants and Ecosystems. So they've learned about respiration in plants and animals, and this unit is a really good opportunity to reinforce that. So we know that plants and animals are giving out CO2, carbon dioxide, and that's going into the atmosphere. But what we can also say, and this is what we'll look at today, is that when those animals die, they decompose, and that carbon essentially gets locked underground. So you've got this store of carbon underground. And this is where we see this interaction between the Earth and the climate, which we'll look at later in the scheme of work. Because that carbon that gets locked underground, and again, that's what's going to be the focus of today's lesson, formation of fossil fuels, that can be burned, it can be combusted. So that's one way, as we will see, that carbon dioxide can be released into the atmosphere. So both of these 2 processes, respiration and combustion, are releasing more and more carbon dioxide into the atmosphere. But there's this kind of balancing, these 2 balancing forces as well. One is the idea that a lot of carbon dioxide gets absorbed into the ocean to make them slightly acidic. And then the main one that they will definitely be able to visualize from their previous unit in year 7 is photosynthesis. So we know that plants take in carbon dioxide to build up these glucose molecules. And that's a way that you can maintain this balance. Now, the story that we want to tell them, and again, this is what's going to come out over the course of a sequence of lessons. We're not going to expect all of them to grasp this straight away. But the story we want to tell them is that essentially what humans have been doing for the last 200 years is upsetting the balance. So rather than allowing the photosynthesis to compensate the respiration and the combustion. Well, we've done so much combustion because we've been digging up these fossil fuels. And again, you can see they're not going to grasp this straight away, but this is where we want to get them to. We've been digging up so many fossil fuels and burning them that we've greatly increased how much carbon dioxide is going into the atmosphere. And the photosynthesis just can't keep up. We can't remove it as fast as we're adding it. And we're telling this story throughout this sequence of lessons that what's been going on here is that we've had this rapid increase in the carbon dioxide concentration in the atmosphere, and that's leading to what we call the greenhouse effect and global warming. So obviously this is a super important topic in the 21st century. This is a really, really important unit, and it's really important that you organise these ideas for students so that they're going to remember it more effectively. I think I'm actually going to stop this video and then I can get into the video on fossil fuels in a separate one because this is already 6 minutes long. And the main point to emphasize is in this lesson, what we're going to focus on is this part of the carbon cycle. And that's what we're going to do in every lesson in this next sequence. We're always going to come back to the big picture and then zoom in on a part of the big picture and look at it in more detail. But I'll talk about formation of fossil fuels in more detail in the next video.